So welcome everyone. My name is Pam Miller. I work in the Sustainability Office as the instructional leader. We're so excited that we have so many people interested in this topic about climate change in the TDSB. It's been a 20-year journey working on the climate change portfolio. And so congratulations to all of you who are eco-schools, because that's our biggest action and our biggest impact is at the school level. So how exciting. So today we'll be welcoming David Hawker-Budlovsky, tackling climate change in the TDSB through outdoor education. And I want to start with the land acknowledgement, and then we'll introduce David, and then we'll tell you about the other upcoming webinars, because we've got a great series happening, and some of our own will be the experts and sharing their wisdom. So this lovely picture is a circular view of the Arctic that was done by an artist in the Inuit community. And it's just a great reminder that we are all connected. So we acknowledge that we are hosted on the lands of the Mississaugas, the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, and the Wendat. We also recognize the enduring presence of all First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples. All right, David, I think we're ready.
Good afternoon, everyone.
David, let me just introduce you. I put a few notes. Hopefully they're not wrong. David is our centrally assigned principal of the Outdoor Education Department, and we really appreciated your passionate defense of outdoor education when the cuts were being made last year. And I know you spoke strongly to the board on why this is an essential service. I met David actually, I don't know how many years ago. David, you were the teacher at the Island Natural Science School and doing some great things there. And then next time I ran into you, or ran you over probably, was at Cassandra, and you were the principal there. Again, piloting some amazing work with a full-day kindergarten, an amphibian oasis, and some naturalized schoolyard installations. I know you as a lover of fine scotch. And so if I had some scotch, I'd cheer that to you. But really, your role recently has been looking at climate action through the lens of outdoor education, and really was part of the Get Outside Month that the TOES folks put together on climate action. And so that's up now, and there's lots of lessons that people have contributed to. So we look forward to hearing more.
Thanks so much, Pam. Really appreciate it. It is really exciting to be the centrally assigned principal and to be working with the folks in outdoor education. It was in 2003 when I was the teacher at the Natural Island School, and to come full circle and work back with outdoor education team is really exciting. Right now is a really important time in the world, and we hear governments and people all around speaking about the climate crisis. And it's exciting that this is something that the TDSB has attached to, and we'll be speaking a little bit to that. My agenda over the next half hour or so is outlined here. We're going to start off with a short activity about what you think climate action is. For those of you who aren't as familiar with outdoor ed in the TDSB, I'll spend just a couple of minutes speaking to that. We had the opportunity to hear Richard Christie earlier this week speak about the TDSB Climate Action Report, and want to make sure the wider community in the TDSB is also aware, and just a very high-level summary. We're going to get into another activity, really looking to you to share some contributions about climate action and outdoor education, what those look like. Pam's alluded to Get Outside Month, another resource that we've been working on, Learn from Home, and a larger discussion forum after that. So for the first activity, how do you define climate action?
Excellent. So some folks are adding to the chat, which is perfect. One person has said that climate action is anything done by an individual or group that has a positive effect on the environment and on climate directly or indirectly. And I would probably add my own about reducing greenhouse gases is a really important part. And I really like Project Drawdown, the idea of drawing down carbon back into the spaces that it came from. So back into the trees, back into the soil. And definitely, I think the climate crisis idea is something that we're well aware of. Toronto also declared a climate emergency, and the TDSB was quick to support that. Oh, great. Someone's mentioned modeling through everyday conversation. And Dr. Catherine Hayhoe is really valuable resource on that note, because she talks about if we can do one thing, talking about it, And there is a group in the UK called Climate Conversations, which has a toolkit, and it's being adapted. They're having kitchen conversations around climate change. Definitely engaging our governments is another important aspect. Teaching others, reducing our ecological footprints, building capacity and strength to action, going beyond doing less harm. So we actually heard from our OISE Climate Action Summit about restorative sustainability, not just reducing it to net zero, but going beyond and making it better. We've got relationships with each other and the government. Again, we hire or elect the government to do the work of the social, to keep our social structures in place, but they also need to have a view on our environment because that sustains us. Standing in solidarity with marginalized folks. Again, we know that climate change impacts our folks that are in poverty, folks that are subject to environmental justice by having dumps or landfills or toxins right where they live. They don't have a voice, so being that voice. We need structural shifts away from fossil fuels and advocate for a new Green Deal. And that new Green Deal really talks about equity as well and having a better world for us all. Definitely engaging students is so important because really they will be the first generation that has lived in a climate change world. So engaging them, and as we know, if you have children or have influenced your own parents, that children have an important voice and student voice is huge. For making a difference. If we can put up new societal structures, how we have depended on healthcare and education, and when it's not the same, how we notice those are vital aspects of our society. Farming, just the way we do farming and how we, gather food or the food miles impacts the whole global economy, changing those structures. David, I've got a few more, but most I think are on the same idea about that it's both small on a very small action, the greenhouse gases, to very large societal structures, to government, and that we need to work on all levels of scale.
Thank you so much for all the contributions. And I think just what I was hearing through the chat box, it talks about, what a vague, broad-reaching term something like climate action is. One way that it's defined by Global Citizen on their website, they talk about climate action sounds like a vague term, but basically it means doing your part to keep the planet clean and healthy. Still not clear? Channel your inner hippie for a moment. It means doing everything possible to get clean air and water, protecting the environment now and in the future. Saying that, cleaning up for all those little things like Aquanet from the 80s, toxic spills, burning fossil fuels, etc. Those are the things that caused climate change. Even if it isn't our mess, it's our time to clean it up and to change human behavior. So really, how do we do that? And that becomes really the question. And I think in outdoor education, we have a really unique opportunity where our role in this idea of climate action in the time of climate change is to help people understand the state of things and how to care about that. How do we help generate care? You need to have some personal connection. So as we talk about outdoor education, it's a real unique opportunity to support students make that connection to the natural environment around them that they may not otherwise have.
There's quite a few all just addressing that now in terms of taking our place as part of nature and not separate from nature. And I think you're speaking to that.
We are very fortunate in the TDSB that we do have a designated outdoor education department and are still able to operate programming through 9 different centers. No other school board in the province, and I would say in Canada, has the type of resource invested in outdoor education like Toronto does. And I feel pretty confident saying that, even given the cuts that have happened. We are in a very unique place. What's on the board right now is the mandate for outdoor education, and this was actually formalized when the board established an outdoor education strategy working group in 2012. And at that time, it was said that every elementary student should have the opportunity to experience outdoor education learning a minimum of 3 times through their elementary career. 2 one-day visits between kindergarten to grade 8, and an overnight visit between grades 5 and 7. And so as a department, we continue to look for ways to ensure that we're meeting this goal, that every student has the opportunity. And I know that there are some secondary educators on the call, and secondary is not forgotten in outdoor education in the TDSB. And Pam would be very aware of this, as she was a site supervisor at the Etobicoke Field Study Center when the secondary program was generated, again, out of a board motion through student trustees. The board does offer one site designated to support secondary students, as requested by schools to engage in outdoor education and leadership development programming. The designated secondary site program is now at the Forest Valley Outdoor Education Center. It is now led by a secondary teacher, and Stephanie Hall is on the call. So welcome, Stephanie, and here's a little bit of a plug. And the real focus really since last year has been not only doing leadership development and outdoor education program and working with individual teachers on how we can support curriculum delivery, but also supporting NAC 10, so the Native Arts and Culture course, as well as the Specialist High Skills Measure, or SHSM, SHSM programs in secondary schools. And we're able to offer a variety of support and certifications in a number of sectors. Really a great opportunity to grow and build that program as we move forward. Through our centers, our day and our overnight centers, there are really some underlying factors that we look at in terms of our programming. We focus on supporting and developing character education through leadership and team building, supporting ecological literacy, and definitely we work very closely with eco schools and the Eco Schools program and supporting schools. How can we support environmental stewardship through a number of earth repair projects? And again, connecting students to the places where they're at. A unique opportunity to support Indigenous perspectives, and have worked very closely over several years with the TDSB's Urban Indigenous Education Center, as well as other elders around the province. And when STEM really was a large focus within the TDSB, and understanding and ability to showcase how STEM can really be integrated within our programming. Underlying those themes of programming really are, we again continue to support the TDSB's multi-year strategic plan. So understanding and seeing the TDSB's global competencies throughout the programming. We ensure that our programming is rooted in equity, providing opportunities for students all across our system in a variety of different programs. We want to make sure that the activities that we engage with the students at our sites and through our programming is experiential, inquiry-based, and place-based, where students really have the opportunity, again, to connect to their environment. This has been a really exciting year when we start to look at the climate crisis and actions that are happening all over the world. And so in December, this conversation stopped moving in small circles, but onto the larger floor when trustees were actually putting forward motions to challenge the TDSB and ensure that there were policies and procedures to support climate action in the time of a climate crisis. Within the report, so the initial motion was through Trustee Mena Wong in December 2019, and this climate action report was presented through the Program and School Services Committee and then to the Committee of the Whole at the beginning of March. And really within the report at a very, very high level, we all are implicated in it, but definitely is generated through the Sustainability Office and the incredible work of Richard Christie and his team. I know Kristen, Pam, so many of you were very involved in the process, was really looking at the TDSB as an institution. What are the policies in place? How can we target funding, use consultation, and youth engagement within the process? Take a look at some key partnerships that the TDSB is engaged in, of course, with Eco Schools Ontario and Canada, but more locally, partnerships like this one with OISE and Hillary. There's so much important, great work that Eco Schools and OISE are doing on a regular basis. They'll work with Evergreen, supporting schoolyard greening, and lots of work with the City of Toronto as well. Right within the report, it talks about not just the facilities aspects of climate action and attacking greenhouse gas emissions within the TDSB, but also educational initiatives that support climate action. So the work that Eco Schools is doing, and now, at its peak, over 400 of our TDSB schools certified, and that number of gold and platinum Eco Schools continuing to rise, and how the outdoor education department can work and support the Eco Schools in that process. The role that outdoor education plays also is named within this report. How can teacher education continue to be supported? And how do we ensure that safe, active, and sustainable transportation continues to be a driving force in the TDSB and supporting the work of Eco Schools? And again, how do we support students in lowering their carbon footprint, and then them really being the key in terms of communicating back home and larger, wider societal change that really can start at school. The last part of the report really talks about school operations, the facility side, and how they're related to school grounds, the greening of school grounds, maintenance of school grounds, energy use in schools, how are we engaging in renewable energy, waste management, and purchasing. So even items like single-use plastics, and how the board tackles all of those things. I'm going to ask Pam to continue to help moderate the chat box. So here's the next activity. In hearing about what climate action is by definition, understanding a little bit more about outdoor education in the TDSB, the question to the group is, what does climate action look like in outdoor education?
Great. So we have being inspired by outdoor education staff to start the Milk Bag Project, taking lessons outside. We have those great resources. Exposure of students to the value of our natural world, sparking curiosity, appreciation, connection, and love for the world. Participate in more environmental improvement projects and project designs like service projects. Definitely inspiring and connecting. I think that personal connection is so important. But there's also actions like proper waste sorting, fostering curiosity, experiential inquiry-based, that connect kids to the land in a positive way. And especially those of us in a dense urban environments, we forget how important, especially during COVID-19, how important the land is, but getting out there and seeing the environment. And I think the built environment is being mentioned here as well. We know that the natural environment is so important, but understanding what our cities look like. Oh, I love growing our own garden, connecting students to the outdoors, and ways that they could be in differences. Thanks for this one, monitoring soot. If you've ever tried the Vaseline on the tree leaves and come back, or you can put tape on the reverse side so the sticky side is out. Somebody did a project on that looking at traffic-related soot. So that was great. Project Tree, nature-based, even remote, schoolyard inquiry. Yes, someone says it needs to be focused on urban issues because in Canada, 80% of us live in urban centers. Thank you. Involving students in the decision-making process. So once they've connected, what do they want to do in their community? What changes do they want to see or learn about? So again, we are the facilitators, not the sage on the stage. Citizen science. So there was a new tweet today about butterfly citizen science that I noticed. I'm going to try and catch one. Yes, teach the students to value all living things. So it looks like we've got a lot of great suggestions. And I think it starts with really that connection and being outside as often as you can, and then working towards inquiry, and from inquiry working towards action.
Thank you so much again for moderating. It's great to see so much action in the chat box. That's amazing. So really, I thank Pam for what she questioned, and outdoor education needs to be seen as a much larger piece. climate action in outdoor education means doing everything possible to get clean air, water, and protecting the environment now and in the future. That's what we talked about earlier in terms of a definition for climate action. So then when we have unique opportunities as educators to help students make those connections to their natural environment. And, you know, as the essentially assigned principal of outdoor education, I want to make something perfectly clear. Although we have a really unique opportunity within our 9 sites, outdoor education is a shared responsibility among us, among all of us. Outdoor education can't be confined to 3 opportunities through through a student's elementary career. Outdoor education needs to be happening every day, in every class, in every school across the system. And I know the group that's in this webinar, I'm preaching to the choir as I see many of the names here today that have been on many of the series of sessions that have been happening over the last little while. But I challenge you to share your passion, interest, and knowledge to others, even if it's just to one other person in your sphere of influence, so that we can grow this community that we are all a part of. In that responsibility, it's so important that we need to make sure that outdoor education isn't seen as an event, but rather as a way of doing teaching and learning. On a regular basis, I challenge the staff that I work with that we constantly wear 3 hats, one of an advocate, one as an educator, and one as a facilitator of outdoor education. And every time we in outdoor education, quote unquote, have the privilege to work with a class, it's important to have the discussions with the classroom teachers and make sure that the opportunities that we're sharing through our programming aren't just a standalone experience. And so we really, within our sites, create pre and post lesson and program ideas that teachers that may not have the experience or don't even know where to look have something to hang on to and make sure that this isn't a one-off experience, and in an ideal world actually builds the roots for a regular state of teaching and learning practice.
If I can interrupt it for just 1 second. It sounds like you're preaching to the choir a little bit, which is great in this room. From our advanced poll that we took as people entered, we had 42% say that they're teaching between 4 and 5 times a week outside, which is fantastic. Another 15% of the people here today typically teach 2 to 3 times a week outside, and another big chunk, about a third, teach at least once a week outside. So I'm so pleased that the people who are here to learn from you are contributing to really taking their learning, teaching and learning outside.
Fantastic. Thanks for sharing that, Hillary. And, you know, again, so as I challenge my staff, the challenge is now to every one of you on the call that are doing that incredible work of getting students and understanding that the learning that happens outside of those 4 walls are shared with your colleagues, so it does continue to expand within your communities, and then from your school to other schools, and then how as a system we can create a culture of learning that happens beyond the 4 walls. But we know it's hard, and especially for those teachers that, unlike many of yourselves, that don't do it on a regular basis. So we're always looking as an outdoor education department to how we can move forward and support teachers from all across the system to get outside. And so May is Get Outside Month. We have gotten a little bit of airtime through TDSB social media networks and our own social media networks, but we haven't been tweeting or been as aggressive in our promotion of Get Outside Month, because the lessons that are there really are designed for teachers to do with a group as a class together. So a little bit less promotion at this time, but we will be sure to continue to promote it as we get used to whatever the new normal is. Get Outside Month this year, the focus is climate action. This was a focus that actually was decided on last spring when we finished Get Outside Month with an Indigenous focus and working with the Indigenous Education Center with that. When we take a look at climate action, there's a variety of different approaches. And so when you look at the types of lessons, and again, the website link on the screen is a public website, so that can be shared within and outside of the TDSB. It goes to a Google folder with these 20 lessons in it. And when you look at the lessons, there's a wide range of activities that support teaching and learning in, about, and for in our environment. And this year, as you look at the activities, they take a look at the Arctic, considerations for pollinators and the important role that they play in food sustainability, trees, waste, finance, and of course, greenhouse gases. So again, it goes back to our first activity about what is climate action, that it is very broad. And certainly we can look at it more broadly than just that piece about greenhouse gases. The other thing that I would say as educators, we have an incredible responsibility when working with young people to ensure that as we talk about climate action and climate change, that it's not all doom and gloom, but actually supporting the little steps that each of us can do that collectively can make larger differences in the world.
The lessons that you mentioned, David, really, someone's asking, are they, they're K to 12? Absolutely. So the kindergarten, grade 1, grade 2, are really that pollinator, that nature connection, the wildflowers instead of bees. And then as we get into the older ones, we're looking at carbon, and lots of them are games.
They are K to 12. When we look at the elementary expectations, we try and look at the overall expectations when they're being created so that they're easily scaled up or down through the grades. And then there are some specifically geared towards the secondary as well. But yep, supporting K to 12. On the website, there's also a link to our archived lessons since 2002. And each year there's been a theme. So again, what you're doing in your classroom, hopefully there's something there that can support you that have been over time. So as said, last year was Get Outside and Do Something Indigenous, 2018, Wellbeing, 17, Social Studies, Histories and Geography, 2016, Theme, 2015, Literacy, 2014, Numeracy, and prior to that, a more generic look at the Get Outside lessons, really a more holistic support. So really my final slide to share before we get to the discussion was a new resource that's been created since the COVID shutdown of our schools. The staff that I work with really wanted to support students and their families to continue to the connection to their natural world when we wouldn't be getting to school. Being very cognizant of the different realities of students during the pandemic, the resources and activities that are shared and have been posted. Keep in mind, those whose access to nature are through a window, on a balcony, a backyard, or those that are able to get into different parks. Unlike the Get Outside lessons that I just spoke to, these are not designed in a way that requires the teacher lead and instructions. They're really there to support the student learning at home and integration with family and support to the families. And all the activities are searchable within an awesome table for those of you familiar with it. And in addition, I know a number of the SOES staff are here. We've added a choose your own adventure link, a primary and a junior monthly calendar of activities that students can click on and engage with, whether they be videos, short activities, or some citizen science type things. I'm super proud of this initiative. It truly is grassroots coming from all across the department. Within a week, we had over 40 activities posted. We're well over 80 now, not including the calendars that have been posted. And I'm not going to speak too much to it or go to it because later this month, the team that is kind of curating the site will have the opportunity to have their own. Without further ado, I'd like to open the floor for discussion and any comments, questions that people have in the group.
Well, how do we do this in secondary? Because there's so many structural challenges like timetables, rotation, or again, new people to secondary that may have, both students and staff that may have not had that background in outdoor education. Linda Ryan is also on the line, and I know she's one of our AQ instructors and teaches secondary in Peel. So maybe David, if you want to just start that conversation, and then I'll ask maybe Linda, and they can add to the discussion.
There are structural barriers, and I think the challenge to educators is, how do we work with what we have? And so in a secondary environment, how can you work in collaborative teams with people that are teaching other courses and really taking a look at that integrated curriculum and how supports can take place? I see also in the chat box, Sylvia has commented about the leadership weekends and leadership opportunities that schools take advantage of at many of our overnight centers, offering weekend programming. Kearney, our Scarborough Outdoor Education School, also has the opportunity for weekend visits to outdoor education. So again, if you want that external piece, getting away from school, there are ways to get away from that, because I know field trips in secondary are extremely challenging, and the coordination of that. I really think a lot of how to incorporate outdoor education can often be bringing the outdoors in. So what are things that students can be asked to do, connecting to the environment, whether that be through research or on their way to and from school, to bring artifacts, materials in to look at within the structure, which is within the classroom, and also just taking, you know, the 30 minutes out of the classroom within the timetable to look at how you can connect to the earth right within the local community. The biodiversity, even in our mowed fields, and for those schools that are fortunate enough to back onto public parks, which many are in Toronto, are great opportunities to connect with nature, even in very short periods of time.
Great. Let me pass that, thanks, David, to Linda. I see your beautiful face, and I think Stephanie, if you're up, you're next.
Thank you, David. It's been a wonderful seminar, very, very helpful. I think for my experience in Peel, it's been a lot about partnerships and sort of cross-curricular thinking. We find by reaching out and developing projects, a lot of project-based learning becomes very powerful, because it allows teachers to sort of reach their curriculum goals, but then do the differentiation aspect that's so important, and allow kids to go and explore. Another aspect I think that's really critical for what I've done is developing partnerships. So working with TRCA, City of Brampton, Region of Peel, they've been incredibly helpful in providing opportunities for our kids to get out and do stuff in the community. So we've partnered with Brampton City Library and TRCA for the kids to develop 3D printed turtle models that the kids put together. We were printing them at the library. They were putting them together and painting them to look realistic, and then we installed them in Heart Lake Conservation Area to act as attractors, nesting attractors for live turtles. So that was a pilot project we did last year, and it was so successful that we're going to continue it in the future when we can. It was supposed to be continuing this year. Thinking sort of in project-based terms, so kids can explore their own interests with a real-world context, and then reaching out for those connections. Our leadership class works as eco-buddies with our feeder schools. And I know someone mentioned in the chat the idea of how we engage secondary students in mentoring.
Great. Thanks, Linda. Like, wonderful ideas. And I see in the chat that people are responding. And Stephanie, over to you. You are not only an outdoor educator, but you have great experience back in the schools as well.
Yeah, thank you. So yeah, I definitely would want to invite any interested teachers to come to Forest Valley for the day and to give any input on programs that they would like to see. But in terms of being in schools, I echo definitely everything that's been said, particularly community connections. In the TDSB, Food Share is an excellent organization that does a lot of support. Evergreen can provide schools a lot of support in school ground greening. And just in my experience, I teach geography, science, and ESL, and regardless of what I was teaching and what unit, when March break is over, it's time to start seeds in my classroom. And I think that connection of starting wildflower seeds, and then the students can investigate where they investigate the plant itself, and then where on the school ground it would do the best, gives a lot of opportunity for some inquiry-based learning. And from grade 9 to grade 12, the magic it's really quite alarming how students engage with just even a bean seed. It's pretty awesome. So I definitely would say that. And my experience in schools is to try and start a committee, or bring something up at a staff meeting and say anybody interested in collaborating on a project is a great way to start. I've had just kind of casual conversations turn into a geography, science, and tech department building planters outside of Central Tech. So, I mean, just kind of get the ball rolling and talking to your colleagues and finding natural ways to everybody bring skill sets together.
Wonderful. Oh my gosh. Again, such great ideas. We miss the kids. I'm going to switch to one more question for me anyway, that I saw in the chat. Is, David, from a principal's perspective, what do we do as educators in our schools to work with the principal to make sure that they are on board too and don't see it as additional risk when we're taking our kids outside?
Right, and so your local context. And so I think the place to begin is instruction and the curriculum connection. If it's seen as a way that is directly seen as part of what you do, it seems less and less of an add-on. If it is something that happens once in a blue moon, that isn't directly connected to curriculum, it really needs to be seen as very focused and curricular connected. I think for a really good argument to help support your arguments with administration would be, how is it connected to assessment, and where is that going to work? And I know in even elementary schools, the administration is one side, but then also parents are another side. So again, how do we really see it as incorporated within all the work? Oh, and there you go. Someone in the chat just said, thinking about engaging parents in the work. Pam, you spoke about the work that we did at Cassandra Public School and looking at full day kindergarten. That wasn't just seen as an outdoor place for recess. It was an outdoor learning environment where instruction was designed to take place. Those are the pieces that are going to help. Start with low risk activities, staying close to the school, and then just start to spread out and spread your wings and fly, because there are so many opportunities so close. We're so privileged within Toronto to have access to so many green spaces close to us. So,
great, thank you. That's absolutely wonderful, because I think it gives us a way in and to make it legitimate. But David, I think you've really reminded us that even though we have this wonderful outdoor education department, and I too have really enjoyed being a part of it, it is a shared responsibility, just like equity, because really it is equity. When we bring our kids outside, they get the wellness and the enriched environments for learning, and that can help undergird their foundation of education, because that's what we're all about, is that student achievement. So thank you for reminding us that it's a shared responsibility, but also giving us a new understanding of how climate action and outdoor ed work together. Because again, we know sort of the spectrum of learning. We start with that emotional, affective, the heart side, and then moves to our head. We start to build those conceptual understandings and then moves to our hands as we take action. And so again, we all can do this and we all need to. David, there is another question. How can we collectively gain programming support for outdoor ed? Or for outdoor learning?
David, I think I want to go back to that question because I think about the panic that my students experienced when you guys were looking at cutbacks to programming, knowing that that would mostly impact secondary, because I know secondary is not the primary driver of the programming that you guys deliver. We sent several emails to Lori asking, what can we do as a group to talk about the fact that this is really important opportunities, not just for ESL students, but really at the secondary level for those students who maybe never had those opportunities and really never get out of their apartment buildings, even though Toronto is surrounded by green space. So do you have any suggestions on what we can undertake to support the work that you guys do?
Throughout all of this that happened, you know, understanding the importance to continue to support secondary programming was there, and hence the reason the entire program stayed intact and moved to Forest Valley, which, you know, as much as the Etobicoke Field Study Center was really close to so many of us in terms of a beautiful space, in terms of supporting the entire system, Forest Valley actually is more central to support the entire system. So I think that's important. I think as we look in terms of advocating, I think it's important to let community leaders know, so the trustees, and let them know what you're doing, how you're incorporating outdoor education, the importance. I know we often, in our tweets, Hillside is very good at this, tagging their learning center